Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome to class number 9, where today we'll be learning all about the environment, recycling, and how things grow. And I'm sure we're all very excited for the next school assembly. So, sit up straight, pencils at the ready, and I hope you all remember to bring your permission slips because this episode contains some disturbing themes along with some naughty images of bums and willies. Okay, so Mr. King is the second episode of Series 7 of Inside Number 9, and this time they've taken us all back to school. And this might be extra nostalgic for some of us older ones, seeing as the technology in this region probably hasn't moved on much since we were last there. The new teacher, Mr. Curtis, played by Reece Shearsmith, instantly feels like a fish out of water, or should that be a tadpole out of the tank, when he realises that his new students aren't too hot on current events, or taking their lessons in English. Also, his new boss, Mr. Edwards, played by Steve Pemberton, barely seems to know his B-mails from his tash tags. Clearly, this is a local school for local people. The setting of a rural village in Wales also lets Steve try out a new accent. We had Mark Gatiss being Scottish last week, and now we have Steve being Welsh. Maybe we'll get Reece being Irish next time to complete the set, who knows. Steve even speaks a bit of Welsh at the beginning of the episode, so fair play to him. I don't know any Welsh, so I can't exactly give him marks out of 10, but I can say from my own learning experience that Celtic languages are a bitch to learn, so we'll at least give him a gold star for effort. Now, if you're at all put off by the prospect of cringeworthy child acting, fear not, because the kids in this episode are absolutely brilliant. Special shout out to Ellen Owen, who plays Kerry, and Rosie Akena as Gwen, both of whom were fantastic. I mean, it might be a few years before they're actually allowed to see the episode, but all of the kids did a great job. Credit also goes to Louise Hooper, who directed the episode, and was also the person who cast all the children, and there's a great chat with her in the Inside Number 9 podcast, linked below. One of the greatest things about this episode, as with so many of the best number 9s, is having no idea where the story is going. We get several hints that something's not quite right, along with one scene in particular that could be read as deeply sinister or completely innocent depending on where your mind goes. From there on, things keep getting stranger and stranger until we get to that final scene, which I'll talk about more in the spoiler section. But while we have these dark undertones, we also get some great laughs from the perpetually chirpy Mr. Edwards, and also from Annette Badland as Winnie the cleaning lady. She mentioned on Twitter that she had a great time working with the number 9 lads, but don't say yes if they ask you for a dance. And of course, all the while we're watching, we're trying to answer the questions: who is Mr. King? What made him so damn special? And why did he really leave his job? It seems he's an important character in this story, given that his name is in the title, but for all his mentions, we realise we don't know very much about him. On first watch, the title also feels like a reflection of Mr. Curtis's mental state, as he must feel like he's doomed to live in another person's shadow. I'm sure many of us have experienced this at some point or another, and if that's the case, then you'll know how all-consuming that thought can be, even if you've never actually met the person. Also, fun fact about Reece's character, the creators of Number 9 had actually toyed with the idea of bringing back Tom, from the Series 1 episode Tom and Jerry. Remember, that character had also been a primary school teacher from London who suffered a mental breakdown. I'm sure a lot of you must have known that already, as my video on Tom and Jerry has had a few extra eyeballs on it since the podcast went out. They decided against bringing him back in the end, and while I think that would have been a fun connection for the fans, I'm not sure if Tom would have been able to go back to teaching after the whole Mig incident, but there you go. Anyway, we did manage to get a few glimpses of angry Reece, who's always funny, and in front of children, doubly so. I'm reminded of Ollie Plimsolls from the League of Gentlemen talking about lesbians, or the first Mr. Jelly scene from Zygoville. It must have been quite a challenge to shoot this, as there's a bunch of lines from this episode you really can't say in front of children, but the effect is priceless. And now I can't look at an oddly shaped carrot without hearing Reece in my head screaming, "Big floppy penis!" So, if you've already seen Mr. King, then you're probably screaming at me right now to get into spoilers, and there's not much else I can say without going there. So, if you haven't seen it, we'll just leave you here, and I'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Class dismissed, and you can catch up on iPlayer if you haven't seen the episode already. And for those of you staying behind, holy shit, that ending! Going full Wicker Man in a class full of kids might be one of the most twisted things they've ever done, and yet it's just so on brand for those two. If you've been a fan since The League of Gentlemen, you'll probably know how influential the Wicker Man was in their brand of comedy, and you were likely ready to shout, "We didn't burn him!" by the end credits. The fear of technology, the local ways, and even the little toy drums are all very reminiscent of their old characters Tubbs and Edward, and for a second I was seriously thinking that Winnie might end up going full Tubbs with her outfit, if you catch my drift. The costume she does arrive in, along with all the kids' props and the John Barleycorn mask, are all fantastic, and those images are now seared into my brain for all eternity. Also, I'm sure one of them must have kept that John Barleycorn mask in their house, unless it ends up being one epic charity auction. Also, shameless plug, but if you want to hear my own long-winded history of Edward Tubbs in the local shop, I'll link that video down below. What else can I say about that ending except I loved it. The kids were great, switching it up from an issue-based legs akimbo play to sheer bloody terror in an instant. Everything about it is perfect. The creepy masks, creepy drawings, and a creepy folk song with a very interesting history. A song that's essentially about harvesting barley but has some insanely violent imagery in the lyrics that sound much more like a ritual human sacrifice. That was a bit of fun to research after the episode, especially at this time of year, and it added a whole other layer of folk horror to an already brilliant premise. Also, I might have said this before, but after this, I am never working or even setting foot in a school ever again. I also liked the mystery of where the episode was going right up until that point, with the implication that one or more of the characters might have some serious issues, or that someone in this school might be a bit of a pedalo. We had Reese popping pills and losing the rag at a class full of kids, and also the way his scene with Kerry ended with a cutaway to a child's painting that almost looked as if it was crying, and hearing him repeat the phrase, "good girl." That could imply two very different things. Then we've got Steve and his Polaroids, he must have had quite the gallery by the end of shooting, and the notion that this isn't quite right either. Finally, we had the drawing of the child with Mr. King, the reveal that he hadn't been sending postcards from Australia after all, plus an entire folder full of dick pics in the school office, some of which had gold stars. But of course, none of that prepared me for where the story was actually going. Two questions I've seen being asked about the episode, which I have to say I was asking myself as well. Why did Mr. Curtis agree to the Polaroids, and later on, why did he call Mr. Edwards first instead of going straight to the police? For the first question, I'd say he's already extremely nervous about the allegation, especially in a small village where people definitely talk. That fear is probably what made him so compliant, even in the face of such a bizarre request from his new boss. Bear in mind he's already on record of having gone doolally in the past, so he probably worries that any further incidents could mean the end of his teaching career, or worse. As for why he didn't call the police after uncovering the evidence of abuse, well, maybe he just wasn't thinking straight after being bombarded by all those pictures of hairy meat whistles. And knowing this setup, chances are the local police are in on the whole thing too, and have probably been responsible for covering up these rituals in the past. That might have been interesting to see, but they probably didn't have time. So that's Mr. King, and all I can say is, they did it beautifully. I'll be keen to hear all of your thoughts in the comments as usual, and your feelings on folk horror in general. According to Stephen Reese, that term might have actually been coined by Mark Gatiss, so there's a bonus fact for you. I hope you're all enjoying this lovely month of May, and for all you hair spotters out there who might need a hint, take a look near the trophies in the school office. Number 9 will be back in 2 weeks' time with 9 Lives Cat. Sounds interesting, but it means I'll have no new episode to review this coming week. However, I was thinking of doing something number 9 themed in between, maybe a very quick Q&A or something like that. I don't know if you'd be interested, but do let me know and I'll make a post later in the week if that's going ahead. Make sure you're subscribed and ring the bell for updates if you want to ask me a number 9 related question. You can also follow me on Twitter at WeeLynn for more updates there. So I guess there's nothing left to say but fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la.